Listening Library presents Vanished. 7 Women Magicians Who Simply Disappeared by Anna Hayes. Narrated by Paige Reisenfeld. To Buzz, Ben, Will, and Willow. Introduction. After I met my husband, Buzz, who is a magician member of the Magic Castle, a popular magic club in Hollywood, I was suddenly immersed in the world of magic, meeting a wide variety of conjurers. I quickly noticed how few women were performing and became curious about the role of women in magic history. I had a hunch that there was at least one incredible story waiting to be unearthed, and I wanted to tell it. I started searching. Then I found her. Or maybe she found me. Her name was Anna Eva Fay, and she was one of the most famous mediums and mind readers of the Victorian era. As I dug deeper, I discovered that there were others like her, women magicians who had achieved great heights, who were once world-renowned, but have since vanished from history. Inspired, I continued my research, which was more like an excavation than a visit to the library. After scouring newspaper clippings, advertisements, notices, and reviews, I realized that trying to create portraits of these forgotten women magicians would not be easy. I would have to become a detective to piece together their stories from fragments of their past, like scattered clues in a cold case. During my journey, I talked with magicians and collectors about this crucial and missing piece of history. They assured me that I was onto something. I kept digging. Then, a bit of magic happened. While researching, I was lucky enough to meet the legendary magician David Copperfield, who invited me to his private museum and library in Las Vegas, the International Museum and Library of the Conjuring Arts. He instructed me and my family, along with a small group of other invited guests, to meet him at midnight at a secret location. For the next 3 hours, he led us through his priceless collection of magic artifacts, posters, and props that date back hundreds of years. At one point, he showed us an area that he was still developing, a section dedicated solely to women magicians. There were photographs, costumes, and props on display, featuring some of the women I had discovered in my search. After the tour, David invited me to return to his library to do more research. With the help of his archivist Glenda, I spent hours poring through articles, images, scrapbooks, and clippings. With each new detail I uncovered from this treasure trove of sources, I was convinced that these women's stories were a rich and untapped chapter in history. I had found my story. Well, more like stories. From the amazing women I had discovered, I chose 7 to explore in Vanished. Each represents a unique contribution to magic. Although on the surface they led very different lives, they all found their calling at a young age and worked tirelessly to perfect their craft, navigating careers for which there was no precedent. These trailblazers were complex and gifted magicians who forged their own destinies, reflecting the true American spirit, independent, resilient, and bold. But there was a twist. Their successes were based on illusions, tricks, and deceptions, which only added to the intrigue and mystery of their remarkable lives. Bringing these women magicians back into the spotlight would be the ultimate magic trick, the big finale. My hope with Vanished is that when you read these incredible true tales of fearless women, you too will brave the impossible and live a life of passion and adventure. Anna Eva Fay. Phantom Princess. The Medium. March 31st, 1851 to May 12th, 1927. A Gift Revealed. 1851 to 1870. Before famed Victorian medium Anna Eva Fay became the Anna Eva Fay, she was Annie Eliza Heathman. Becoming one of the most famous women magicians in the world, an entertainer of queens and kings, was a kind of magic trick in itself, since the odds were not in her favor. Annie was born into poverty on a modest family farm in Southington, Ohio, on March 31st, 1851. Her mother, Lucretia, raised the children and ran the farm, while her father, Joel, worked as a shoemaker. He sold handmade leather shoes door to door and often traveled far into the countryside, not returning until dark. As the oldest child, Annie took on household duties to help her mother. She would have planted and harvested the backyard garden, canned and pickled the produce for winter, washed and hung out the family clothes, and cared for her younger siblings. Lucretia taught Annie at a young age what it took to survive. Annie loved and admired her mother and found comfort in her strength and resilience. Her life as a young girl appeared simple, unaffected by the world's troubles, though a civil war had been declared and the country was fiercely divided. Then, in a single moment, everything changed. In 1862, when Annie was just 11 years old, her mother died suddenly from complications of giving birth to Annie's sister Eunice. The tragedy haunted Annie for the rest of her life, but it also transformed her. Since her father couldn't support and care for his children on his own, he sent all but his infant daughter to surrounding farms as foster children. At the time, farmers willingly took in children to work in the fields. Most of the children who provided extra hands for their foster families were obedient and toiled away without complaining. But Annie refused to accept her fate. She was lonely and restless and longed to return to her family farm. Each night, after performing domestic tasks that included sweeping the wooden floorboards, tending the hearth, and toiling the land for a family of strangers, she plotted her big escape. One night, while her foster family slept, Annie slipped out into the darkness. In the cold night air, she ran as fast as she could toward her family home. The next morning, a neighbor discovered her asleep on the side of the road. Annie's escape had failed. And worse, it had angered her father. She pleaded to stay with him, promising to take care of her baby sister and help run the farm. He refused to take her back. He couldn't afford to support another child. Now her future was more uncertain, since she had not behaved as was expected of a foster child. More discouraging, her father placed her with another foster family within days of her escape attempt, this time farther away from the farm. Annie felt helpless and alone. Annie didn't know it then, but her new foster family set her on a path that would change her life forever. Almond Bruce, A.B. French, her foster father, was a respected medium in the spiritualist community in northern Ohio. Spiritualists believed that people known as mediums could contact spirits from the great beyond and communicate with the dead. A.B. French gave religious lectures, published writings in spiritualist journals, and performed seances in neighboring farms and homesteads. Followers of spiritualism met in small circles around the country, promoting the idea of life after death and the existence of a soul. During this time, mediums used their skills to create the illusion of receiving messages from the spirit world. Even if they weren't really communicating with the dead, they still provided much-needed comfort to those in mourning. As a boy, A.B. French claimed that a spirit appeared and spoke to him. He believed that he possessed a special power. He could speak to ghosts. His mother, also a medium, claimed that she too could speak to the dead. She began to train Almond in the art of contacting spirits and delivering their messages to loved ones. Together, they traveled throughout the Midwest conducting seances and raising spirits from the grave. When Annie arrived at the French family's doorstep, the spiritualist movement was gaining popularity in America. By some accounts, there were over 10 million spiritualists around the time of the Civil War. At first, A.B. put Annie to work performing domestic chores. But eventually, he needed another hand at the seance table. His children were younger than Annie, and they didn't show an interest or talent for conjuring, which means performing an illusion. He decided to teach Annie the skills of the art of mediumship. She took to it quickly and showed great promise. Encouraged, French began teaching her more skills. She learned how to fix her eyes on the...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?